She doesn't know.
I don't know, Kathy.
She doesn't know herself. No.
Do you still want me to say
Yeah,
something?
just
What's wrong with her?
leukemia. She has leukemia. She
So don't write good, get well soon.
Yeah, she's up in the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah,
What
no.
should I write? Like,
Well,
Thinking
whatever you want
prayers,
to.
thinking of you.
thinking of you, I got that one.
Yeah, prayers. She said prayers.
Okay, we are live.
Okay.
So tonight's a fun night. We're going to do Mephibosheth. Okay,
I can't.
Mephibosheth.
I don't know how to say that.
Mephi, B-O, Mephibosheth, S-H-E-T-H. Mephibosheth. Yeah,
Gotta be careful there.
yeah. He's a fun character. So yeah, this is
It's real easy to mispronounce.
I got this one from my friend Pastor Greg when I told him we were doing Lost Stories of the Bible. He said, "Well, have you done Mephibosheth?" And I said, "No." What a good idea. Okay, so let's look at 2 Samuel 9. 2 Samuel 9.
Oh, it's close.
Say it one more time.
2 Samuel 9.
No, his name.
Oh, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth.
No.
And if Hebrew scholars are out there correcting me, then tough luck. But I don't have it in Hebrew in front of me, but that's the way I look at it in English.
Where's Jackson when you need him?
Yeah, really. Where is Jackson? Reverend Schofield. Doesn't that just sound like a name that should write commentaries or some kind of weighty book? The Reverend Schofield. Well, the Reverend Schofield says, what a good name.
Yeah.
Okay, and David said, "Is there still anyone left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba, and they called him to David. And the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" And he said, "I am your servant." And the king said, "Is there not still some of the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God to him?" Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in his feet." The king said to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba said to the king, "He is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lo-debar." Then King David sent and brought him from the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lo-debar. And Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and paid homage. And David said, "Mephibosheth." And he answered, "Behold, I am your servant." And David said to him, "Do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore to you all the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always." And he paid homage and said, "What is your servant, that you should show regard for a dead dog such as I?" Then the king called Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, "All that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson. And you and your sons and your servants shall till the land for him, and shall bring in the produce, that your master's grandson may have bread to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall always eat at my table." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, "According to all that my lord the king commands his servant, so will your servant do." So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. And Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. And all who lived in Ziba's house became Mephibosheth's servants. So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate always at the king's table. Now he was lame in both feet. Okay, so David, if you read before this, you find out, that David he really loved Jonathan. This was a time when men were allowed to love each other without being accused of being homosexual. That is a relatively modern era kind of thing, that if men show any affection to one another or express any affection for one another, well, they must be gay. And in this time, and even now in the Middle East more so, when Judy had the Egyptian student, it was really interesting to see how he was very much more physical, than an American would be. So it's kind of interesting and you see pictures of him. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and see pictures of him as his friends in Egypt, and they're male friends, and they're sitting on each other's laps and hugging each other, and all this kind of stuff. And of course, they still kiss. Men kiss each other in the Middle East, and this was and that's the kiss of peace.
Yeah.
We share the peace. We don't do it here anymore because that was one of the things that COVID killed, and I never brought it back.
Good.
Yeah.
You guys don't like the kiss of peace?
It's
It was shaking hands.
it is shaking hands, and it just, my problem with it,
Yeah.
if it was done correctly, if people would do it correctly, I'd have no problem. It would be a wonderful thing, because what the kiss of peace was in the ancient church is the celebrant, the person who was celebrating the sacrament that Sunday, went to the assisting priest and kissed him full on the mouth. That was the way it was. Kissed him on the mouth. He then stepped down in the chancel and kissed the other assisting priest, and then it spread, and it zigzagged all the way back through the congregation. And remember, there's no pews in the ancient church. People stand for the whole service. There's no pews, except for there's a few benches around the wall for pregnant women and elderly. But by and large, you stand if you can for the whole service. That's why, this modern invention of please stand if you are able. Why do we have to say that? Do people who cannot stand or are crippled or whatever, do they not understand that it's okay?
Yeah.
Do we have to say that? Please stand as you are able. No, come on. We stand. If you can't stand, okay, that's why you sit. But otherwise you stand. So anyway, and then the point of the kiss of peace was to show that we're ready to take the Lord's Supper together. There are no divisions among us. It was a symbolic gesture to show that there's no divisions here. Now, if obviously we wouldn't do the kiss of peace anymore because of culture, but we shook hands. And what that was supposed to be is whoever's celebrating the sacrament goes to the assisting minister and shakes his hand and says, "Peace of the Lord be with you." And then he turns and does likewise, and it zigzags all the way back through the congregation, symbolizing we're all at one with one another. And if you can't shake the hand of somebody, then you need to abstain from the Lord's Supper. Because what you're saying is, I'm not forgiving this person. I have no desire to forgive this person. So if you're not forgiving, then don't ask for forgiveness. That's that was the point of the symbol. Unfortunately, what it became was just a falderall of shaking hands and waving, and then some churches, you look at it, they walk around, they make the peace sign at each other since COVID because they don't want to touch, So they're making peace signs at each other. It's just silliness, I just, and I just can't tolerate silliness. And the older I get, the more curmudgeonly I get. Yeah. I mean, the silliness just drives me to distraction. And so thankfully, we just never brought it back.
I think it disrupts the service.
Yes, well, the falderall does. When it's done,
Yeah.
when it's done well, when it's done right, which I have seen done. There's some congregations that I have been to that do it well, and it's very quiet, it's very reverential, it's very clear. Okay, let's see. Oh, the Dr. Billadu's chiming. I remember it was more like social hour, quickly catching up with people. Yeah. Exactly. And that's not what it's supposed to be. There are some congregations that I have seen that do it at the beginning of the service, which is better. If you're going to do it, you say, before we get started this morning, let's everybody greet one another. Okay, all right, then you can do all the falderall you want to. But even that bugs me, because when I come to worship, I want to get mentally prepared for worship. That's why I try to keep the doors closed in the back at least 5 minutes before the service. That's why I try to keep the ushers' voices down if they can, so people can sort of mentally get ready for worship. So even that I don't like. Same thing with the children's message. The children's message, and you notice we don't have those. I do a children's message at the opening of Sunday school, which I think is the appropriate place for a children's message. But some places do it right in the middle of the service, and again, it disrupts the whole thing. When I was at a church that we had to have a children's message, and I wasn't the senior pastor, so I couldn't stop it. The senior pastor thought it was wonderful. Of course, he never did it, but he thought it was a wonderful thing. But people would get up, go out and get coffee. And I mean, it was like intermission. Wandering, coming in with their cup of coffee for the rest of the service, and
Wow.
they used to sell cookies like we do, here after service. They'd go out and they'd get cookies and bring them in. Yeah. It was like, why don't we get some guy selling popcorn and peanuts and walking up down the aisle too, Just be like, just
A movie theater.
yeah, or the ballpark, popcorn, peanuts, fresh cookies. So the kiss of peace is, the point is that what I was talking about was that David loved Jonathan, and of course Jonathan was killed in the battle against Saul. Remember, Jonathan was killed, and of course David killed Saul as well. David pushed Saul into a position where Saul fell on a sword. But it drives me nuts because you'll see modern commentators, biblical commentators, suggest that David and Jonathan were homosexuals.
Oh.
Yeah, I've seen that, and it just drives me to distraction. Is that I contend that if we would get rid of this stripping away that we have done in this culture of all male, the ability for men to love one another, we wouldn't have as much homosexuality. I think some of what we have in the homosexual community is men who don't know how to appropriately express love for one another. I think they really don't, and they probably don't know how to express love for women either. Because we have reduced love to sex. That's what we have done as a society, and so that's all we understand is sex, and that's why you'll see like kids, grammar school kids, young kids. They'll see two teachers hug each other, and they'll start rumors will start spreading. Teachers to be very careful that they can, especially female teachers. Yeah.
My tea bag tonight?
Yeah.
The essence of life is to communicate love.
So weird.
Valerie's, if you can't hear that, Valerie's tea bag. She has these tea bags that have
go with what
little
we're saying.
sayings. And tonight, her tea bag says, what is it?
The essence of life is to communicate love.
The essence of life is to communicate love.
Not sex and love,
Valerie and her Swami tea bags.
They are yogi.
Yogi, yeah.
Jules?
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
Yogi is a real popular brand anyway.
So anyway, that's the phrase. So David has now come into his kingdom, okay, and things have kind of begun to settle down for him by the time you get to 2 Samuel, and he stops and he says, I want to share my fortune with at least the family of the man I loved. I know he's dead, but I want to find out if there's anyone that I can share this with. And so Dr. Bildu says, such a good tea brand.
Isn't it? It has a real nice flavor to it. It's really weird that all the yogis have this kind of weird Indian little twinge to it. But it's really
Some kind of spice.
some kind of spice, but it's not sugar. It's which is hard to find. So it tastes I don't know. But yeah, so she likes it too. So that means
Apparently
something.
so.
She's a doctor.
She's
so it must be
a tea aficionado.
She is.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. She buys tea like nobody's business. I was gonna say like some women buy shoes, but she buys shoes like that too. So
Next time I see her, is she coming in town for Thanksgiving?
no, she won't be here until after the first of the year.
Well,
That
I'll have
week,
to ask her her
first week of
favorite
January.
tea.
Yeah. Okay, so David comes to the kingdom. He says, "Look, I want to do something for my friend's family." So he sought Jonathan's son, and he finds Mephibosheth, lame from childhood. Okay, and we know how he was lamed. When there was an attack on Saul's house. This is in 2 Samuel 4:4. You can read it, but if you want to, but there was an attack on Saul's house, and the nurse dropped him in the attack on the floor. Of course, castles in those days, stone floors, and must have badly broken his feet or something because he was lame in both feet. Okay, so that's we know that. So he's a son. He's lame from childhood, and David calls him in and literally makes him a part of the royal court. Okay, and by doing so, he ensures that this guy is forever gonna have plenty. Okay, because he's part of David's court, one of the wealthiest men ever in the world. I saw somewhere that they were comparing David's fortune in modern dollars, and it was something like 10 times more than the richest man in the world now. It was, just phenomenally, and then Solomon was even greater. So I mean, really, really, really hugely rich. And he invites him to eat at the king's table for the rest of his life. This is no small thing. I mean, to eat at the king's table is a big deal. So you're never going to have to worry. I mean, basically, he won the lottery. He's never going to have to worry about food, clothing, anything. He has servants forever. He was living a life of a pauper. We don't know how he was making any money, but with his lame in both feet, it could have been good. And all of a sudden, Mephibosheth is now part of the royal court. So, why is this story important? Why is this section devoted in 2 Samuel? Why this section devoted to this story about David and Mephibosheth? Because we have to remember that nothing in the Bible is written by chance. It's nothing. God didn't say, "Oh, that's a cute story. Let's put that in." Everything in the Bible is written for a reason. So, the real challenge with some of these lost stories of the Bible is to figure out why they're not in. Besides the fact that some of them are kind of gross, but they're not in arch books. They're not in little children's books or children's Bibles. Why? Why? So why was it important? So I want to think about that. About why is this story? The name of the lesson is Mephibosheth and you. First, parallel to us. Mephibosheth comes to David expecting punishment and maybe even death. Remember, he falls at his feet because the king, who was at war with his grandfather Saul, has called him to his chambers. But instead, he receives grace. So God calls us to him. We deserve death, yet we're given grace. Okay? Second parallel to us. Mephibosheth is invited to live under the king's protection. We have been invited to live under God's grace. We so often forget that. That is a phenomenally important thing to remember. I used to have a lady in my church in Seattle who taught a Bible study called Living Under Grace. And she taught it for years and years and years and years, and just kept on recycling the lessons and doing it over again, because you just can't, she used to say, I asked her name was Louise. I said, Louise, are you going to change your curriculum at some point? She goes, no. And I said, well, I just wondered. You've been teaching this curriculum for like 20 years, and just wondered. And she says, no, it's still important. It needs to be heard. Yeah. And she had people who came all 20 years. And then when she died, she asked me to take it over. And I said, okay.
And you changed it.
And no, I kept doing it, and people kept coming. Because I realized, and that's what helped me realize that you can't overteach grace, because it is so contradictory to everything we experience in life. Everything in our lives is about works. Yeah. We work for a living, we work for this, we work for that, we work for grades. I mean, from the day one in school, you're working for grades. I loved, I know he was kind of a flagrant liberal, but he had some really good things to say. William Glasser. Remember him from the 60s? I mean, he was kind of a hippie. But he has some really cool ideas, and one of his ideas, he wrote a book called Schools Without Failure, and he started this principle with the I think it was Laguna, but I can't remember for sure. Anyway, it was a school for girls that he started, and it was for girls who had problems and had gotten kicked out of schools and had been in juvie and things like that. And it was a girls' school, and it was a school without failure. You couldn't fail. There was no possibility of failing. And it wasn't, let's dumb it down so they can all pass. It was, we're going to teach until you get it. Okay? And we're not going to give up. And of course, it was also a boarding school, which made it even better. You have complete control of their lives that way. Which I'm a big fan of boarding schools, and I'm a big fan of single-sex boarding schools, because I think 90% of the problem in middle school and high school comes from being in the same classroom with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Because think about it, I mean, hormonally, it's really hard to learn when you have those hormones boiling in your head all the time, you know? So, I mean, I don't advocate for, convents and monasteries. I mean, I think there should still be connection between the sexes. I just think learning would be much more productive in a single-sex situation. I really do. But anyway, so he wrote this book, Schools Without Failure, and it was basically an education of grace. You come into this classroom, you are going to pass this class. You don't have to worry about it. We're going to make sure you pass this class. And they did it all the way through college, and they had this huge percentage of girls being accepted to colleges all over the place. Of girls who came from places it was in the LA area, came from places in LA that they would have been pregnant at 16 and on drugs and, running in gangs, and they never would have been going to big name colleges. I mean, I'm not talking about, whatever it is, some little states like Chicago State or something like that. I mean, they were getting into places like Stanford and Harvard, and they're getting to big name colleges, and all out of this idea of schools without failure. The problem with it is that you really have to have committed teachers. You can't have, and you're just never going to find enough teachers who are really committed to at that level. These are people who gave up everything to teach at this school. They put that before anything else. And of course, nowadays with we've moved teaching into a profession. It's not a calling anymore; it's a profession now. And so it's you attract people who want to be a professional instead of a called servant. No one wants to be a servant. Our politicians don't want to be servants.
And I wonder though how those girls did though, because once you get to college, you go from school where everyone's dedicated to you to a big, lecture hall with 1,000 kids, and the teacher says you got 3 tests.
They didn't have lecture
Good luck.
halls in those days. In the 60s.
Yeah, in the 60s it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
Oh, in
Yeah.
college?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, a
We
little
didn't
bit
have
different.
big lecture halls then.
Yeah.
We had lecture halls, I remember it was in one, but not very often.
And you went to U of I, right?
No, elementary state.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Mildew says, but aren't all our jobs a calling from God? Yeah, and Luther would say yes. Luther would say whatever you do in your life is your vocation, your calling. That's what vocare is, the Latin for calling, as opposed to occupation. He says a Christian doesn't have an occupation. A Christian has a vocation, because our calling is to be present as Christians wherever we are, and to use whatever we do in order to proclaim the gospel. Okay?
I work for the government, I know this, but since you said in Romans that the government is ordained by God, okay, it has made me, so I work for the Department of Employment, and we, the amount of overpayments, improper payments, so they put me in charge of the integrity, I'm a team lead on the integrity task force. We have over $1 billion and improperly paid.
Yeah.
And this is now being spread to, if you guys knew the real numbers, it would blow your mind.
Yeah.
And, and Illinois employers, they're footing the bill, and taxpayers are footing the federal. It depends if it's state or if it's a federal program for the pandemic. But my point is, ever since you told me that, I've been with much more fervor. This is, if God ordains the government, then it is my job to start, get this better, this better. And this given me more fervor and oomph, if you can believe that, so that's why I'm always so tired. I work 10 hours a day, so what you're saying is, I'm saying I feel what you're saying since I've been coming, since you told me that and everything, that God is, if he ordains it, then I must do a good job.
Right.
I must improve it.
Yeah, and that's what Luther's point was, because when Luther was alive, people would send one of their children to the convent or one of their children to the monastery, and that was sort of like their payment to the church. to make sure that, because that's really, those were the big jobs. That was those were the calling. And Luther said, no. Everything's a calling if you're a Christian. If you're the candle maker in town, you have a calling, to serve your fellow people with candles, if you're the baker, if you're whatever. So in that sense, yes, but the problem is, I think that most people don't see their jobs that way. I think most people.
Well, but I'm saying, like, by you explaining that to me, that God, I never really saw my job that way. It's ordained by God, the government. I never even thought about that. But once you said that, it changed everything in me. Like,
Good.
that this really does matter, and this matters to God, and like so I guess people don't see it that way because they don't go to church and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, but and it does give you much more passion for your job. But it's a great thing to really care about what you're doing all day.
Yeah,
Right.
It
Elon
is.
Musk is looking for people for his Doge department.
For what?
He's interviewing for his Doge department.
Doge.
Just like you.
Oh,
Department of Government Efficiency.
Oh. Yeah. Supposedly he's everything's going to become streamlined.
Yeah.
I would say start by firing the 83,000 IRS agents that they hired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently
Well,
there's.
I'm not so sure they were hired totally.
They weren't hired.
I don't. You never hear of being. It's still the same. Still
No.
takes all the time.
Well, I can tell you exactly how many, at least, there's federal employees work for this that are in the state of Illinois next time. If you want, because I do those
Yeah.
numbers, I just don't
It's,
remember.
it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And it's so weird. Like even like during COVID, I see all the other industries decreasing, but the government getting bigger. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ah,
Yeah.
this
Right.
is so bad.
Yeah.
What a waste. And these, well, I gotta put there's a federal agency that I work with, and they're so bad. Like I tell them, I explain to them, like, isn't this your program? There's
Does
something
that
else.
mean they're supposed to understand it?
Well, you would think so.
No.
No,
But I'm
they
just
don't.
so
No.
with the whole Elon Musk, I started trying to make the federal government more efficient. I say yes.
Yeah.
What I see and what I deal with on a daily basis isn't good.
Right.
I understand that completely.
Any-
I,
Any sensible person knows that the federal government has needed to be cleaned up.
for a long.
Yeah. 100 years, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably,
Yeah.
since, at least since Wilson.
Yeah.
Wilson is where it really started getting messy, I think. But,
Well, when you get to Wilson, read about that one.
oh yeah. Yeah, Wilson was a peach. But the point is, and then Sarah also said, and then if you understand that it's a calling, you find your employment a joy rather than a
Right,
drudgery.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
It's
that's
a
it's-
gift to have that
Right.
that mentality.
right. It's tied in. There's two types of people. There's the type of people who love their work and they find fulfillment in their work, and there's the type of people who only work because they make money to be able to do whatever they love.
Yeah.
I contend that if you understand that your work is your vocation, that you always love your work. Or that if you don't love your work, you should stop and go do something you love, because money is not a good enough reason to keep a job. There's no amount of money that makes
All day long.
for
Yeah.
8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
There's no amount of money for that. It's just not possible. And if you're a miserable person, then you're going to be a miserable witness as well. So you're going to be miserable at doing everything when you're miserable, because it's just the way it works. The concept of living under grace, is part of that calling. To know that whatever we're doing at whatever time we're doing it, whatever stage of life we're in. That's why I laugh at people all the time who make the mistake of telling me, "Well, I don't do that. I'm retired." Yeah. No. There's no retirement in the Bible. No, you might shift gears, as you're able, or you may not be like, I don't think I could go out and mow the lawn anymore, like I did when I was 30, but out in the church lawn or things like that. But you might shift gears, but there's no retirement, because we continually serve God till we drop dead. That's the way it works. Our retirement is in paradise, But if you understand this life under grace, then that's a joy. That's not drudgery. That's a joy. Life under grace. I've been invited to eat at the King's table. I eat at the King's table every week. This is great. I don't what am I going to do? Sit at home and watch Netflix?
Yeah.
And then eat whatever's in the refrigerator, because that's what I do is when I'm watching TV is I start thinking about food. And then it just leads to bad stuff.
You know what you should do? Make what I do. Make tea.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, as long as you have something to put in your mouth.
Yeah.
When I'm done eating dinner, the first thing I do is get the kettle going, because if I don't, then I
Yeah.
sit and thinking about what sweets do I got in there.
Yeah.
Do I got some chips?
Yep.
What's in the freezer?
Yep.
But if I got the tea, then it's weird. So this is just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Tea.
It does help.
It helps.
It does, well, also the other reason it helps. I mean, this has nothing to do with Mephibosheth, but the other reason it helps is because many times we confuse hunger with thirst.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
got
very
Dr. Bill to do.
that's a very common thing.
That's
Yeah,
a big
probably.
thing
So.
in Weight Watchers. They say if you're hungry,
Tea solves all problems.
It's up there. It's up there.
Yeah, yeah, we really do. We confuse the feeling of thirst and we think it's hunger, and then we go and start eating. But plus the fact of just being bored and having something to
Yeah.
do, it helps too. Yeah, I agree.
How about fold 'em and pray?
What's that?
How about fold 'em and pray?
Yeah, fold them and pray. Yeah,
What
right.
does the Weight Watchers say?
Weight Watchers always said that we confuse it with hunger pains. Drink a glass of water.
Yeah,
okay.
8 ounces, 16 ounces,
Yeah.
and you'll find you don't really need anything.
Right.
Yeah, fills you up.
Yeah, it's very often your body needs more water than you think it does.
Your body's made up of 2/3 water.
Yeah, right. And yeah, once the water's all gone, we're like 7 pounds of chemicals, something like that. 8 pounds of chemicals. I don't know. Yep, that's all that's left when someone's cremated. Yeah, Sarah, how many pounds of chemicals are we? Okay, that's it on Mephibosheth. Just remembering that we are all Mephibosheth. So we're going to move on to the day the sun stood still. So look up Joshua 10. We're like 70% water, she says. With that we covered.
Why is it
We knew we were 70% water. We want to know how much it weighs. How much do the chemicals weigh when you're
Well, just take 70% times your weight. Takes 0.7 times your weight.
I think it's less than that though.
Okay.
Like if you cremate somebody, the ashes like 70% of my weight. What I'm 212 pounds.
Well,
So
if you're so 70 would be. Let's say you're 200.
see that would be like
140.
60 pounds.
So yeah, it'd be 60.
And there's no way my ashes are going to weigh 60 pounds because I mean I've
No.
handled plenty of ashes. So it's even less than percent water. I think you're not thinking about how much liquid, how much moisture is in the bones, and how much moisture is in, all that kind of stuff. So maybe it's once you cremate somebody, you get rid of literally all the liquid, and then you've got like I think 7 or 8 pounds, something like that. Yeah, but you burn as fuel for the fire. Right. Yeah, you are fuel. That's all we are really in the end, just fuel. Joshua 10. As soon as Adonai Zedek, that's Lord of Righteousness, that's what that means, King of Jerusalem, heard how Joshua had captured Ai, that's one of the big cities, and had devoted it to destruction, doing to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, he feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all the men were warriors. All its men were warriors. So Adonai Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent to Hoham, king of Hebron, to Piram, king of Jarmuth, to Japhia, king of Lachish, and to Debir, king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, and let us strike Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the people of Israel. Then the 5 kings of the Amorites the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, and the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon gathered their forces and went up with all their armies and encamped against Gibeon and made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp of Gilgal, saying, "Do not relax your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the hill country are gathered against us." So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you." So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal. And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon, and chased them by the way of the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. And as they fled before Israel, while they were going down the ascent of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with the sword. At that time Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, "Sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Aijalon." And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jashar? The sun stopped in the midst of heaven, and did not hurry to set for about a whole day. There has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. So Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Okay, so Joshua, remember Joshua's Moses' second, who was put into charge after Moses died.
And he was Moses' servant's son.
No, Joshua was one of the Israelites who was, well, the son of one of the Israelites who was taken out of Egypt. And then he came up under Moses.
Okay.
And God chose Joshua when Moses was going to die,
Yeah.
to lead the people of Israel.
But I thought he was it was the son of a servant to Moses.
Oh,
Joshua was the
son of none.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
a nun. None.
Yeah,
Yeah,
son of
yeah,
none.
yeah.
Yeah. Right, I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay.
So Joshua, he's in charge. He's leading Israel. Next week, or next time we meet, next week, we'll talk about the end of Joshua's time, the kind of the reunification, because the people kind of separated after Joshua died, and we go into the book of Judges, right? And we're told that everyone did what was right in their own mind, which reminds me a lot of the church today.
Yeah.
Everyone just does whatever's right in their own mind. And then at the end of the book of Judges, they kind of reunify again.
Don't you hate when people say that though? Like, well, I think I'm a good person. I do what's right in it's kind of my own mind. And you know what I say? It sounds like you don't need a guide.
Right. That's exactly right. Well, what they're really saying is, I am my own God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so
Yeah.
not. It's they don't realize that it's not. If everyone said that, it would be disaster.
Yeah. Well, welcome to life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
As long as you're not hurting anybody, it's okay. Yeah. As long as you're not hurting anybody, I'm not hurting anybody by doing this. No, you're hurting society
Yeah.
by doing this. But the society doesn't matter. Only the individual matters. So if I want to do whatever I want to do, doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want because I'm free to do whatever I want. Yes, legally you are. Legally you're free to do anything as long as you're not hurting anybody. That doesn't mean it's good. I think that's the thing we struggle with as a society, is the difference between what is legal and what is good. There are lots of things that are legal that are still bad. It's not good for the society. It's not good for you. It's not good, but it's legal. It's legal for me to, sit in my house and eat 50 cartons of Twinkies. No one can do anything legally about it, but it doesn't mean it's a good thing.
Well, it's going to raise insurance costs.
Right.
It will society.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, talk to Sarah about that. Because she works in a public hospital.
Okay.
And the obesity that they deal with, and I'm not talking about being a little overweight. I'm talking about BMIs of 50, 60,
95
70,
is that
95
one.
was that
That
one.
one
Yeah,
time.
I figured out that one was her BMI was 95. You know,
I can imagine.
I mean,
Fat?
Yeah.
Their body mass is 95% fat?
no, the BMI, body mass
the
index.
Oh,
So
That
you're
has
the
to do
the
with
weight
age
and
and
height.
weight and height and everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
here
there
she
you
is.
go.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah.
BMIs of 60s all the time,
Oh,
all
yeah.
fat. Yeah, I mean it's regular. It's just a regular occurrence.
Yeah.
BMI. I mean my BMI. I'm mildly obese, which means that I'm about 10 pounds now away from being overweight. That's my goal, is to be overweight. I just want to be overweight. I don't want anyone to be able to say I'm obese anymore. Yeah, I don't have to say that. So I'm 10 pounds away from being overweight. Serious. I've been obese for so long. I just want to make my doctor say, "Okay, you're just overweight." You're not obese. I told him one time. I said, "Do you have those caliper things that can give me a more accurate BMI?" And he says, "You don't need that." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Just look in the mirror. You're fat. All you need is a mirror." Okay, point taken. But anyway, I mean, my BMI is like 30. Okay, I think I'm 30.5 or something like that. A BMI of 60 is twice as fat as I am. And a BMI of 100. Holy man, how do you even live like that? But she works in this public hospital, and I'm sure that it's true here too. The public hospital is true here downtown. Is that the clientele is just horrendous, and their attitude is because we're not allowed to body shame anymore. Everybody's okay. No, you're not, because if you're that
They can shame you
overweight
for smoking, which makes me mad.
right, yeah,
It's like, you're
yeah,
500 pounds. You're just gonna kill you quicker than my smoking is gonna kill me.
that yes,
Sorry.
it's absolutely right. Is that there's no difference physically between smoking too much or eating too much. Okay, now the problem is with nicotine is that it ramps up, to the point where you're smoking ridiculous amounts and you're going to kill yourself much faster than eating yourself to death in most cases. Let's see, and they have to be put on their heads for surgery, which makes it super challenging and kind of scary sometimes. I don't know, they have to be put on their heads, I think tilted.
Tilted, yeah.
Yeah, and along with all of their fat, they have ridiculous amounts of other comorbidities associated with diabetes, heart disease, all that goes along with being tremendously obese.
Yeah.
Morbidly obese is what they call it. Yeah, I guess they have to tilt them on the table so that their fat runs up that way so they can get to wherever they need to get to. Yeah,
Well, it's
Yeah,
true,
yeah.
because if you're trying to get to like your appendix, gotta get that out of the way.
yeah, right.
It's your excess.
It's very challenging. I mean, there's nothing, anesthesiologists particularly.
Those
Just-
people are probably really big risk. I bet they worry. Those people worry anesthesiologists.
And we have a selection on our anesthesia pre-evaluation of super morbid obese. Yeah. Oh man, I have so many stories. Yeah, super morbidly obese.
Well, what's
So-
the TV show that my 600-pound wife?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
Something
gross, I
Like
can't
that?
even
I
watch
don't
that.
watch it neither, but I know it's
I
on
do because
there.
it makes me feel better about myself.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is that these people are bad for society. We got to stop worrying about body shaming and do whatever we need to do to get the. I mean, overweight, fine. I'm not concerned about overweight, but when you got a BMI of 60, you're costing me money. Okay, because I guarantee you can't work, and so you're getting
You're on disability,
your Medicaid, your
yeah.
disability, all the insurance is higher, and we got to figure out a way to lovingly help people like that. That's the key. Is you can't go in and say be mean to them, or just cut them off and let them starve in the street.
Yeah.
You can't do that as Christians. But you also can't just ignore it and say it's okay.
And if you say anything about it, your body changes.
And it's no different than alcoholism,
Yeah.
smoking, any bad vice that hurts your body. You know, you got to do
Even
what you
shopping,
can do.
people who have spending addictions, that pisses me off too, because it's like they declare. I know someone in my family who declared bankruptcy like 7 times. And it's like every time you do, think about the cost that you're transferring to society,
Right.
all that debt that you're not
Yeah.
paying, that now is being transferred to my rates. You know, it's like, and that really makes me mad. That's another addiction that gets transferred to that hurts society.
Yep.
Yeah.
She says she's had some patients with thighs the size of her waist.
Well, her waist
Yeah.
is small.
Well, she's not tiny. You know, but I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
to have a thigh that big is
Yeah.
pretty big. Okay, so, where was I with
The
the,
sun stood still.
Yeah, the day the sun stood still.
yeah, I'm looking at where I was. Okay, Joshua destroyed Jericho and Ai. Okay, their kings. It says what it says there was done with their kings. What was done with the other one, but it didn't tell you what it was. What it was is their kings were posted outside the city, impaled on trees. Okay, as a warning, if you oppose God, this is what happens to you. Okay, it served as a warning for all the nations of Israel that Joshua was coming to their land, and he was going to take their land because it had been given to him from God, and they could either get on board, or if they stand in the way, this is what's going to happen to them. And God had promised that that he was acting on God's promise. This is what you do. So the Gibeonites, who we're talking about here, they had tricked Joshua into making a treaty with them. Gibeon was a few miles northwest of Jerusalem, and they had heard about his power and heard about this and intelligently. See, remember when Jesus said you have to be as wise as foxes? You know, he's talking to Christians here. He's saying you got to use your brain. You cannot confront Satan stupidly. Okay, God gave us a brain to use. So the Gibeonites say, well, we got to figure out a way to avoid being destroyed. So they sent envoys dressed in rags to pretend that they were just poor people from a distant land and needed Joshua's protection. And they pulled on, and see, Gibeon the Gibeonites are powerful people, but they know that God is behind Joshua, so they don't want to go up against Joshua. So they send these guys, these envoys, and Joshua agrees to help them, and he signs a treaty with them, thinking he's being a nice guy, big brother, taking care of these poor people. And later he learns that they're actually people from right next door to where he is, and that they had tricked him into this treaty. But you know, he upheld the bargain. He said, "I made the treaty. I'm going to uphold the bargain." So now they come to him in fear because the 5 kingdoms of the Amorites are up against him, because they're the weaker part of the Israel-Gibeon pair. Okay, so they're afraid they're going to get destroyed in order to become a buffer between Joshua and the Amorites. Okay. And so Joshua's response is important for Christians to hear, because notice that the people are united. The people who are united in this covenant are obligated to support and protect one another. The people who are united in this covenant are obligated to support and protect one another. The terms of the covenant is really immaterial. It's only that the covenant exists. Okay, what was that? I don't know what that was. That wasn't a text. Okay, I never know what noise my phone means. It just makes random noises. I finally learned which one is the front door sound. So when that one doesn't, and now I have a different sound for when the garage goes up, but because it's on the internet. So my garage is on the internet. I don't understand all these things, but anyway, so that's important for Christians to hear. Because there is a reason that we actively support other Christians, and sometimes it's kind of funny because churches don't always want to do this. You know, sometimes churches will be like, "Well, it doesn't affect us. You know, what do we care?" Not this church so much. I mean, Trinity's pretty good, but I've served a lot of churches that why do we have to send money to the district? You know, we don't need the district for anything. Well, right now,
You might.
but when you do, it's a really good thing. And the fact is that the money that we send to the district to support the district is our tithe. Okay? We ask everyone here to tithe, and then we turn around and tithe to things like the district, the outreach house, the adult daycare, the ministries outside of this congregation is our tithe as a congregation, and so when congregations start cutting their giving, I always and districts too, when the district starts cutting its giving, I always warn them. I wouldn't toy with God like that. We're doing pretty well. Things are going awfully good. I don't think we want to cut back on giving so we can have more. And I preach that sermon to myself too, because it's really easy when it comes time to write the check each month to say, I really need to pay this bill off, or I really need to save for this, that, or the other thing. I really need to do that. So maybe I'll just skip my offering check this month and do that instead. It's really easy to do. And you can convince yourself, and you can come up with all kinds of justifications. Well, I did this, and I did that, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, bottom line. How much did God give you last month? What's a tenth of that? There you go. Write the check. Okay? And don't ask me before or after taxes, because then I'll ask you, really, who provides for all of your the military to protect you, the police to monitor, the fire department? Where does all that come from? Who provides all that? You do. Okay? That's money you pay for services rendered, not just. I understand, but we live in a society, and that's the way societies work. But still, that's so. Don't ask before or after taxes, because now you're like the rich young ruler asking Jesus, "How much do I have to give?" Just give, whatever the percentage is. Just give. And I say the same thing to churches. I say the same thing to districts. Give, because you will never, ever outgive God, ever. So this is a really good message, because Joshua, not David. Joshua could very easily say, they tricked me into this treaty, and I got better things to do than to go defend the Gibeonites. And they got themselves into this with the Amorites, and so, let the Amorites have them. No, we're connected by a covenant. Christians are all connected by a covenant. We're all children of God. We have to be concerned about the people of Kenya and the people of Niger and places where Christians are being executed. We have to be concerned about missionaries in Pakistan who live every day. We pray for them every Sunday. That's Jay and Julie. They live never knowing if they're going to get arrested tomorrow, because technically they're illegal, because Pakistan is an Islamic state. So technically they are illegal. Right now there's a very progressive government in Pakistan, and so things are a little easier for Christians. But you never know. The day could come when the police are at the door. But Joshua says, no, we're in covenant with them, and that's the way it's going to be. So they go to battle with them, and they do what's right. And what does God do? He sends hailstones into the battle. Hailstones that are big enough, they kill people. Okay, which, we've seen those modern day. We still have hailstorms sometimes, particularly in Kansas, Nebraska, that area, and Texas, northern Texas, Oklahoma, where the hailstones are softball size. Those hit you in the head, they can kill you. Okay, and so he sends hailstones. This is important because it shows that Israel has God's favor, and it protects his people physically. God is not just a well-wisher. And, I hope you do well. Bye. Let me know how it turns out. God is physically involved in our lives. The reason I contend that the reason we have not is because we ask not. Okay? We don't ask, so God says, well, okay, if you want to do it on your own, go ahead. Okay? Or we look for help in the wrong place. We think that God, this is not worthy of God, so we'll handle this. No, don't ever do that. Don't try to handle your own problems. God offers his help. You know, if Elon Musk called you up tonight and said, "Hey, would you like some help with your bills this month?" Would you say, "No, I've got it handled. Thanks. Nope, don't need any help. I got it handled." Of course not. You'd say, "Well, yeah, I could really use X number of dollars for this or X number of dollars for that, or I do really need a new car. Or I really need blah blah blah, whatever." Happy to have it. Send the checks. God does that. God offers you help. It may not come in the way you're looking. You might be looking the wrong place because God helps in different ways. You may still have to endure the battle because the battle's good for you, because God's going to teach you something in the battle. That's why I encourage people, don't ask why, ask what. Not why am I going through this, but what is God showing me? What is God teaching me? Ask what. Always ask what, because God is always teaching. So you can always be sure that he's teaching. So finally, we get to that part that the atheists hate, that where the sun stands still. Okay, so a lot of Christians hate it too, because it doesn't make any sense. How can the sun stand still? Well, actually, the sun does pretty much stand still. It moves some. Yeah. So really, the sun stands. But how do you explain that it stayed day for like 24 hours? How do you explain that? Well, some commentators say, well, it was just poetic language. It didn't really stand still. It was just poetic language saying that the day went on as long as necessary for the people of Israel to defeat the enemy. A second explanation is that somehow it was clouds from ash from some volcano or something that blocked out the sun, and they couldn't tell whether it was day or night. Because when we've seen that happen in Krakatoa when it erupted in the 1800s, we have accounts of darkness for days in the middle of the. Yeah, so that's one. The third explanation, the one that's least liked by most people, is that it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Is the sun standing still more remarkable than parting of seas? Is the sun standing still more remarkable than raising people from the dead? No, God can do these things. And I've had people tell me, well, that's silly, because if the Earth stopped rotating around the sun,
waters would stop moving.
Oh, it would be there'd be earthquakes and blah blah blah. God can do what He wants with His creation. So I have personally no doubt whatsoever that the sun stood still, that the Earth stopped revolving, and that God gave them extra time to finish off the Emirates.
Do you think maybe there could be some sort of like eclipse that they misunderstood, that they didn't know?
Sure, it could be all kinds of things.
I don't know why. No, I'm sure if the sun stood still. I'm not doubting the miracle. I'm just throwing that one out there.
So, for instance, the parting of the Red Sea. A lot of people don't like that one either. And so there have been all kinds of scientific explanations of how there was probably an earthquake at some place further north that stopped the ground rose up for a period of time, and it stopped the flow of the water, and so everything rushed down and they were able to cross, and then the earth settled back down and the Red Sea refilled. And they've tried to show that there was some kind of earthquake happened at some point that could have been that time, and there's always people trying to figure out scientific explanations for miracles. Lazarus, I love the raising of Lazarus because his sister is his sister. Lord, you can't open the tomb, he'll stink.
Is that Martha?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's going to stink. In King James, he stinketh. He may stinketh. So, it's because, they're thinking, this is dumb. Why would you go into a tomb of a dead guy who's been dead for 4 days in Middle Eastern heat? This is not a thing you do. And he says, roll away the tomb. And Lazarus, come out. And the guy comes walking out in grave clothes. They say, take the grave clothes off of him. He's alive. Well, I can't explain that. Was Lazarus sleeping for 4 days? How are you going to explain that one? So if you can't explain that, then I can't explain how the sun stands still either. I also can't explain how God calls light into being by speaking, which is what He did, or calls or makes human beings out of dirt.
Dirt, yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's or makes a woman out of a rib. You know, most astonishingly, of all of the whole story, the most astonishing thing is God did this in response to Joshua's prayer. So anybody who ever questions whether or not God answers prayers or thinks, oh, but what I'm asking is too big, are you asking for the sun to stand still? You know, if you're not, then you're not asking anything as big as Joshua. He asked for God to stop the rotation of the earth, and God did it for him. That is absolutely amazing. And Joshua was just another sinful human being like all of us. So never doubt the power of God in your life and what he will do for you. Because for Joshua, he made the sun stand still. Okay? All right, let's close with the blessing. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift his countenance upon us and give us peace. Amen. So next week we're going to have the sliced up concubine. That's going to be our lesson for next week.
All right.
And maybe another one if I have time. I might get two in next week weekend. The sliced up concubine.
So Pastor